We're going to see the deployments today and all the terminology, all the areas related to deployment. There are a lot of questions that will come out of the deployment. There are a lot of new terms related to these deployments. I just listed out the kind of a very quick list of here. SCA, this service connection architecture. Composites are the packages. It's like the application that you get. A SOA application is usually called a composite. Then composites internally have components. The SOA components. You got BPEL, mediator, human workflow, decision service. So all of them together, or some of them together, will form a composite. Then you got revisions. So it's like versions. Revisions are like versions. Then there are partitions. Then partitions are logical groupings. I will go into details in each of those things, but just as a summary kind of. Then instances. Instances is when a composite gets called, an instance gets created for that composite. Then faults. So when these instances fail, faults are created. Then rejected messages. Anyway, when these instances receive or send what we say wrong inputs, it gets rejected messages. A dehydration store. Dehydration store is a group of tables in the database or in MDS that stores the state of these instances. These are all various terms that we talk about. These are various fundamentals we'll learn in this, and we'll also see how to deploy an application. Alright, so here now the first thing that gives you a clear understanding of a composite versus an application is this one. Normally if we see Java applications, they're all enterprise applications, JEE applications. So we have all kinds of Diwali started, guys, sorry. Oh man. So our enterprise applications, Java based applications, we usually get it in WAR files, ER files, RAR files, resource archives, jar files. This is a common bundling extensions, and each of them have different technologies. This is all Java code, right? Then we get these Java code, we deploy it to WebLogic applications. So through a regular, any of our methods using console or using an AND tool or whatever. So the content or the code inside these applications is purely Java. Now as compared to a Java code, what is usually called an enterprise application or a Java based application, a SOA application is called a composite. And before we go into a composite, a SOA application gets created using what is called a service component architecture, SCA architecture. Can you guys put yourself on mute? A slight background noise. Okay, cool. So here, before we go into composite and the way it's bundled, there is something called service oriented business application. Now normally if you take a Java application, it's also a business application. It also tries to achieve a business functionality, but we have a different type of achieving the same business functionality. The different type is what we call a service oriented business application or a service oriented business mechanism. If you, for example, if you see the regular eBay application that we all see. Let me get back to that eBay application. This is an eBay application. If you see this one, on the right side, this is more a technology oriented way of defining our business functionality. You have order management, delivery, tracking, feed. This is a technology. It's more like a JEE flow. All of them assuming JEE application. So you might have a front end that passes through, as opposed to this JEE based business functionality. If you look at this one, the left side, this is a service based business functionality. In a way, you will first say call the order management, which is here, then call the delivery module, which is here, call the tracking module, which is here, call the feedback module, like this. So here the same functionalities are the same softwares, but they are being treated as services by using adapters. So SCE has a different approach. That's it. We are still doing the same business thing. We are still trying to achieve the same business functionality, but here everything is homogeneous. Everything is a service. So the business functionality here we are trying to achieve in a service oriented manner. Everything is simply like we are calling X service, we are calling it Y service, we are calling Z service, like that. Where we don't discuss about the technology that's being used. Everything is a service in its way, because any software, any technology can be exposed as a service. Now those applications which are designed based on a service oriented architecture are called SOBAs, or service oriented business application. And to develop such an application, we use SCA, the service component architecture. You have components by components. The flow is decided by components by components. Now the jar file, or usually the jar file that you get for SOA, is based on SCA architecture. You will get a jar file something like this. Let's say like this. This is a jar file you will get from a developer, which is a SOA component, sorry, SOA composite. And the same thing usually we'll get it in JEE based applications also. You will have some name with it, a var or an AR or a rar. Here also the extension is same, but the contents inside are not Java here. The contents are more like are going to be based on a BPL. And how we create a BPL program, we have seen a video already, a drag and drop model of JDeveloper or NetBeans kind of tool. So inside this, this composite is designed based on the SCA architecture, service connected architecture. So here our service component architecture, you call it service connector, you call it sometimes. So here inside this jar file you have a large group of components. Remember here, just observe the slight differences that I am using. There is a component and there is a composite. So let me come back to the original slide. Here we are. So our composite is developed based on SCA architecture, and those composites are nothing but, in a generic way, the business applications, service oriented business applications. So here you got Java applications, which are JEE applications, then SOA applications, which are called composites. So from now on, when you are an administrator, you don't call an application anymore, and because that's not Java. From now on you will be calling composites. So you will say A developer will deliver you the composites. You will deploy the composites. You undeploy the composites. That's how, the composite from application, your jargon or your usage now revolves around composites. So the composites are nothing but the files that you get from the developers. These are applications. Now obviously a composite internally will have the components. Depending on what we are trying to do inside a composite, you may have one of the internal 5 components. We know SOA has 5 components: BPL component, mediator component, human workflow component, decision services and business rules component, Spring context component. There's 5 components. Now a composite, which is an overall application, will use components inside it. You may have all the components, or you may have some of them. Alright, the overall composite again is written in the business process execution language. So from now on, your deployment revolves around composites. It's not Java applications anymore. Now this is a composite structure and how usually a component internally works. This is just a basic building block. Let's say this can be a human workflow component, or it can be a mediator component. So if we have a mediator, for example, say it takes inputs, it routes it, let's say, or it gives out outputs. So the incoming requests or incoming connections are called services. The outgoing are called references. References is where the request is being sent out. Incoming inputs are where they are called services. Now the implementation is usually in BPL. Now, so what we have here is a component is what we are looking at, the blue box here, and multiple such boxes together will form a composite, which is in the next screen. If you see, this is a composite, and this is what you will be given as a jar file. So there is a front end, or what you call a service end. There is a back end to every application or every composite, which is a reference. Good. So this is what you are going to get from a developer. So you have a component here, you have a component here, then all of them together is called a composite. Alright, when somebody calls this composite, they will be calling nothing but a service. So composites are normally, if you deploy a Java application to WebLogic, you will access it using a browser most of the times. Whereas if you deploy a composite to a SOA infrastructure, there is no browser based access as such, or it's not designed to be accessed using a browser. It's more like a web service. So you will use other tools like SOAP UI. All of us, I will show you, SOAP UI. So using SOAP UI, you send an XML input, and this composite replies with an XML output or XML response. So from now on, we are actually talking everything in terms of XMLs. And to talk to a composite, you will be sending an XML input to a specific URL. You will get much more clarity on that one as we proceed. Alright, this is one of the composites. Now if you see this composite, this will be deployed to our SOA domain, that's the one they have created. So you may have multiple composites again. So you may have multiple composites. Alright, so let's say composite X, composite Y, one calling the other one. It all depends on how it's designed internally. Now if you see, there is another term here. It's called a wire. wire is a connection between the components. It's called a wire. And this is all the technical jargon. We wouldn't be really looking inside a composite, just like you won't look into a Java application very too often unless you are a developer. And this is how internal. This is more like a developer centric design. Now this entire thing gets bundled and given to us in a single bundle or multiple bundles, and we will deploy it to our SO infrastructure.
So Anil, the communication happens between components and composites as well, like according to this diagram, or like will it happen from composite to composite level?
Composite to composite at composite level. Inside the composites, you will have component to component level communication also.
Okay, so yes. Okay, so basically composite to composite, right?
Yes. At a high level, composite to composite. That's right.
Okay. So composite will be, components can be developed in any language, but the composite will be done using DEPL for the integration. Right?
Yes, that's right. The internal component implementation can be in anywhere. Okay. That's correct. That's correct. Okay. And yeah, Prasad, how do we identify components and composites? No, we will not be given components from the developers. So even if it is a single component, you will still get a bundle like thing, which we still call it a composite. You get it in a jar file. Even a single component, if that's the entire overall whole application, that will be bundled and given to you as a composite only, as a jar file. So component itself has no extension. It's the composite that will be given to us, and it has a jar extension or a zip extension, which is a bundle of composites. So here if you say, each of these composites are usually bundled into jars, and you will be given multiple jars from a developer. Now these jars have a specific naming convention. Look at this one. A composite usually starts with SEA with the name, and there is a revision like version and the jar file. So this is one revision of a composite. This is the second revision, like versions. This is the third revision, and the naming convention is always same. So if you say, for example, one of our applications that we're going to use, nCodeIT apps. Now, if you see this application, this is one of a sample application we're going to use. SEA, the name of your composite, the revision. The same way, this is revision 2. The same way this was revision 1. Like that. So all these composites have a specific naming convention. Now you may be given a single composites like a jar file, or all such composites can not, various versions. We are talking about, let's say, different composites, composite 1, composite 2, composite 3. They all can be bundled together, and you can be given a zip file, and you are allowed to deploy the entire zip file at a time. Means multiple components together can be deployed at a time using SOA infrastructure, and that zip file is usually called a SAR file. So there is no .SAR extension as such. A SAR file or SCA archive is nothing but a group of jar files. Alright, each of them is basically a composite. Alright, so you will be given either single jar files, or you will be given a zip file which internally has lot of such jar files. If it is a single jar file, you call it a composite. If it is a zip file which internally has a lot of jar files, you call it a SAR file. Now you can deploy the SAR file. I'll show you the deployment, then we'll go into further things. That will make things easy for us. So the next screenshot that you're looking at is how we deploy. Let me do one thing. Let me send you this PPT so it will be easy for you guys to follow. Okay, download it from our location. The empty brain, and keep it open on your system. This one, the fifth one, this one. Deployment of composites. Okay, let's come back. So we're trying to deploy. Now this deployment is deployment of a composite that we're going to do. So we will be bringing up our admin server, we'll be bringing up our server infrastructure, then we will deploy it using console. So I'm going to get into the cloud server. This is the cloud server. Let me bring up the database first, then I'll bring up the admin server and the source server, then we log into the console. So let's do it quickly. Oracle /SSDB. Start up. We will not be doing this one in real time because there is a DBA who takes care of this stuff. But here we have to do everything. So just keep your database related activities to the minimal. Alright, your database is up. Let's start the listeners. Alright, our database is up. nCodeIT. So these are the database related process. Let's get out and start our admin server. So I'll go to domain home, where we have created our domain. Students online is where. City students online SY Oracle. So when you're practicing, make sure you create your directory here itself. Alright, just the way I have created OLSY, you can create your own directory and make sure you work inside that directory only. So go to Oracle, middleware, user projects, domains, encode server domain, start the admin server. So I'm going to start this, and this is the content of the admin. This is simple wrapper script. We have seen these things. So open up this log, fnf admin dot. This is all web logic. This has nothing to do with this way. It says for your biggest headache is it takes too long for the servers to come up. At least for the SOA server itself, it takes very long.
That to now only admin only, right? We are doing.
Yeah, itself is taking so long.
Maybe we need to do this is the first activity when the class start, I think.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. The moment we start, we'll bring up everything, keep everything ready. Alright, admin is up. Now let's start the SOA server. In the meantime, we can also log into that console. I'm going to use Opera browser. It's much lighter. I'll close this thing. So let's log into the internet. We got 7001 enterprise manager. Let's get to the enterprise. SOA admin to the login. Alright. So the SOA server is still coming up. You won't have SOA or BAM anything here. Only thing you will see is WebLogic domain. This thing. There are 3 servers in the WebLogic domain. And our applications, internal applications are up at this point. Enterprise Manager. These are actually deployed to the admin server. So from the servers we have both SOA server and BAM server still showing down. Once SOA is up, this should be up. Let's see SOA. This is our SOA server coming up on the front screen, booty screen. Okay. It's actually deployed. I have deployed it yesterday. I was just testing it. Let's refresh this page. If you refresh, you should see the SOA here on the left side. Yeah, here we go, the SOA infrastructure. Now if you see this one, this is SOA related stuff. Every server is called a SOA infrastructure because each server has its own set of engines. Alright, in those engines is where the composite is running the components. Now what you are seeing here, the default is the partition. Now partitions of SOA have no specific functionality as such except for grouping the composites. Other than that, there is no other functionality really. So if you see here, the default partition, I have just deployed the application that we're seeing. So let's say here I'm going to undeploy it. We will do a deployment again. I was just testing yesterday. No, deployment of composites is through Enterprise Manager. This is not a Java application, so we don't use console anymore. If we are deploying a Java based application, we will be using console. Here this is not a Java based application, this is a BPEL based application. That's how to put it in a precise way. So here, so composites are deployed through Enterprise Manager. Composites are not deployed through console. Console is for Java based deployments. When you get a SOA based composite, you have to deploy it using the Enterprise Manager because it goes to the SOA infrastructure. SOA infra here you have. Now inside SOA infra you can have multiple partition. A partition is a logical grouping of composites. So you can have composite 1, composite 2, composite 3. All of them will go into a default or any partition. Now normally in any company what usually we do is, let's say there are departments, HR department, then there is a finance department, then there is a sales department, there's a marketing department. All the applications related to one department can be combined into one group and they can be deployed into a partition. Now the only facility that partition provides is this thing. You can select a partition and say shut down or undeploy all applications on this partition. This is undeploying. The same way you can say start up all applications on this partition, shut down all applications on this partition. This way it makes it easy to manage a group of applications. Other than that, the partition has no other functionality. Sometimes you will wonder this, these partitions are useless. They are pretty much useless.